So up until now, the kind of timeline of Survivor is a little bit funky. You have Borneo, which was, about as good of a first season you could get. It wasn't my favorite, because most beta seasons aren't my favorite of stuff. And then you had the Australian Outback, which was like, it was perfect. I don't think any old age, or any classic age season can be better than Survivor the Australian Outback. And after that, there was Survivor Africa, which was okay. I liked it decently enough. If I had to rank these top, the first 6 seasons, Africa would probably be in, like, the best category, or, like, at least an honorable mention. Marquesas is another one that was, like, a block, one of, I know there can't really be multiple magnum opuses, but, I guess it would be magnum opus. But Survivor Marquesas is also another one that's really stellar. And then we had, Survivor Thailand, which is a dumpster fire of dog crap. I'm not gonna talk anymore about that. And now we have Survivor Amazon. Now, the beautiful thing about Survivor Amazon is that even if it was mediocre, it would still be compensating for, once I said, the garbage fire that was Survivor Thailand. But the thing is, I liked the Amazon. I genuinely did. Now, if I had to rank them in my head, it would probably still be near the bottom, but that's also because I'm only 6 seasons in, so probably it'll be higher up as it goes. But what's significant about, what's significant about this season is that the original tribes were split on gender lines, which is a nod to the all-female Amazonian tribes that historically lived around the area. And this twist also flipped the nuance of the season, along with the tribe swap, so both men and women began to work with each other, and essentially because of that, pagonging never really happened. Anyways, this video could get really long, so I'm just gonna get to the point. We're going to start with the losing tribe, the tribe that didn't have the winner, which is Tambaqui, or the men tribe. And our number 8 spot is Ryan Aiken. And, what do you expect? He was the first boot of the season. What do you really want me to say? Typically up to this point, though, there were other people in the consideration for the first boot, like Rudy from Borneo, Jeff and Kimmy in the Outback, Clarence in Africa, Patricia in the Marquesas, and Tanya in Thailand. Sure, some of the Tambaqui wanted to get Daniel out, but that's where the reason Ryan went comes in. The first immunity challenge was sort of an obstacle course, and at one station the tribes are split into 4 groups of 2. Ryan and Daniel were tied together and had to cross a balance beam. They really struggled with it, and was kind of like, you're looking at them and like, how can anyone suck at this? It looks relatively easy. Apparently they thought it was a good idea to straddle the beam like it was a horse. They blew their lead, and where the reason they were going, and they were basically the whole reason they were going to council in the first place, so there's no question one of them was going. What's funny, though, is that Ryan and Daniel were sort of seen as the slackers of the tribe as well, which annoyed people, especially Roger. Ryan and Daniel were able to get Matthew kind of on their side and lobbied to also get Rob's vote, but it was no use. Ryan was voted out with a very close vote of 4-3 to 1. Poor Daniel, he sort of ostracized himself from the rest of the tribe by not being the most helpful around camp, and also, because he dropped the ball on competition so often, he might as well have never even had the ball in his hands. After Ryan's booting, Daniel made an even stronger bond with Matthew, who didn't seem to be going anywhere just yet. The cool thing about the pre-merge phase of the season, though, is that Tambaqui and Jabiru essentially alternated each council. Same thing as, kind of the same story with, Survivor Borneo. They kept, by the merge, I think they were even somewhat. However, this was a detriment to Daniel's game. Let's compare Daniel and Ryan to Diane Ogden and Clarence Black from Survivor Africa. Both were almost equally being considered for the first boot, but after Baran went on a winning streak, Clarence proved his worth and found his place in the tribe. They didn't go back to council for at least 2 councils, which meant that he was able to kind of redeem himself. But because Tambaqui had only 1 council off before having to go to the next one, Daniel didn't get the chance to prove his importance to the tribe, and any time that he didn't really use as well as Clarence did. It's a shame. I wanted to see him come back for maybe another second chance season. I think he could possibly redeem himself there. On a typical season of Survivor, the person to take charge isn't always well received, like Michael from the Outback or John from Thailand, but once again, the opening twist changes the dynamic of the tribe's attitudes towards the boss of the tribe. At Jabiru, people like Dina and Jean were calling most of the shots, and there was never any movement to overthrow them. It was the same story at Tambaqui. People followed what Roger said without much question. Although Roger may have lasted longer than other players similar to him like Michael Skupin or John Raymond, his short-lived success didn't come without major scrutiny regarding comments he made while on the show. Going into the merge, Roger wanted all the men to team together to pick all the women off. You know, your average pagonging. But little did Roger know, Rob and Alex had formed an alliance with Dina, Jenna, and Heidi, and upon hearing that, they flipped the game on Roger. What's ironic is the first individual immunity challenge of that season. You know, the one where Jenna and Heidi got, pretty excited over some peanut butter and chocolate. Roger voluntarily jumps off first after a bribe, feeling 100% confident he had the numbers to stay. Just goes to show the passage of time since the beginning of the show. At first, pagongings were an unspoken move made by the majority tribe alliance, and by this point, if you even suggest pagonging the other tribe, you're immediately a target. The other funny thing that I hadn't really thought of until I saw a video on it is Roger, the episode where Roger gets eliminated is essentially the first episode ever where the production doesn't even try to hide who's going. There's not any mystery of like, oh, an alternate person that could go. It's basically from the beginning of the episode. They're like, yeah, Roger's going, guys. Dave was a very interesting character. He was a pretty smart dude, and he fit right into the Tambaqui tribe. He was sort of Roger's lapdog, and he definitely kept the spirits high at camp. I do think, though, had he aligned himself more to people like Rob, Matthew, Alex, or basically any of the women post-merge, he for sure would have lasted longer than he did. After the merge, he stuck with Roger and was sort of sent scrambling once Roger was voted out. At this point, people started considering possibly voting out Matthew out of worry that he'd kill the entire tribe with a machete. But they did decide ultimately to cut off the body of the snake and get Dave out anyways. Dave even knew his time was up because he was acting all sweet to the women whom he didn't really have any serious conversations with, except for Dina on that spa reward. An interesting bit of trivia about Dave was that for the tribe swap, they had the youngest members of Jabiru and Tambaqui spend the night together talking, and in the morning, surprise, they picked new tribes, kickball style. The funny thing is, though, had Ryan not been voted out, it would have been him who went instead of Dave, because technically Ryan was the youngest Tambaqui member to begin with, but after he left first, that title went to Dave. Now, here's an example of a player who was doing a pretty good game until he made a very small-brain decision. Alex immediately found his footing amongst the tribe. He wasn't afraid to stand up to Roger on occasion. He was probably also the most likable dude in the Tambaqui camp. I mean, Rob was nice too, but he was also pretty sneaky and was just too good of a player. Alex was one of the people who switched to Jabiru after the swap, along with Rob and Matthew, where he hit it off with the ladies. Going into the merge, he had formed a tight alliance with Jenna, Rob, Dina, and Heidi, who had switched to Tambaqui. Heidi had switched to Tambaqui, but they just sort of met up with her post-merge because of her affiliations with Jabiru. They cut Dina prematurely for reasons I'll explain later, probably in the next video, but I don't exactly remember if I talk about it later in this video, because I think, like I already said, this will be a two-part, so if you want to hear stuff about about the women from this season, you'll have to wait until the next episode, because this video is already getting long. Anyways, the four of them were sitting pretty at the final 7, knowing they had the numbers to pick off Matthew, Butch, and Christy. However, at this point, this is the point where Alex done goofed. He decided to tell Rob, his own ally, that at the final 2, if he wins immunity, he will vote Rob out. Now, Rob could just laugh it off, not mess up at the Final 4 immunity, but that's not how Rob operates. Rob turns to Matthew, who he had been building a rapport with over time, and says that they're gonna flip the vote and get Alex out. They managed to get Butch and Christy on board as well, and just like that, the rug was yoinked under Alex. Probably one of the most epic blindsides in Survivor history, and is definitely the turning point of the post-merge phase this season. Also, for those who didn't know, Alex is currently married to Kim Powers from Survivor Africa, which I thought is really cool. This guy is sort of hard to talk about. He was a typical sweet older man character, and he played the role pretty well, yet he wasn't as prominent as other people of the same archetype like Roger Bingham from the Outback or Pascal English from Marquesas. I wouldn't say he was a purple edit, but I wish I got to see more of Butch. What I did see, I liked. I respected his job profession as a school principal, he seemed to love his family, but at the end of the day, I didn't really know how he made it to Final 4. He wasn't as charismatic as Roger from the Outback, and he wasn't as strategic of a player as Pascal. He didn't really take charge with alliances. I think he played it safe almost every opportunity he was given. He sort of faded a bit after the post-merge when all the drama was shifted to the alliance with Rob, Alex, Jenna, and Heidi. Once Rob broke that off, he formed an alliance with Matthew and Butch, but it's mainly Rob pulling the strings things, and Matthew nodding his head, and Butch is far in the back going, "So who are we voting now? Okay." Butch was finally thrown back into the limelight at the final 5 when their camp essentially burnt to the ground, and everyone kind of silently suspected he was responsible because he was always stockpiling a comical amount of firewood right by the camp. Ultimately, this suspicion wasn't enough to get him voted out then, and he planned on going to the final 3 with Rob and Matthew, but after Jenna won immunity at the final 4, one of the dudes had to go, and Rob and Matthew were tight at that point, so Butch had to leave. This guy had a roller coaster of a season. He started at the bottom of the Tambaqui tribe. I mean, he was well liked and was a physical asset, but he was associated with a couple of slackers who botched a bunch of competitions. He found his footing at the middle part of the pre-merge, I'd say, and then once he got into the merge portion of the season, people started to become very afraid of him. They must have either not been serious or he just didn't pose that much of a strategic threat at that point, because one episode they decided to cut Dave loose instead, and the next one, Matthew won probably one of the most clutch immunities of all time, forcing the core alliance to unnecessarily kick one of their own. Well, I guess in that case it would have been necessary. It would have been the only choice they really had, I guess. I mean, I guess they could have voted for Butch or Christie, so I don't really know why, but I'll get into that in the next episode. But after that, Matthew was back to being in the minority of Jacare, that was the merged tribe name, alongside Butch and Christie. But then Rob came to him as a saving grace, building a new alliance right as the one he was currently in was about to crumble. He coasted on from there to the final 4 because his new alliance had the numbers. There it got bumpy though when they dropped Butch, and then Matthew's plans to be in the final 2 with Rob were thwarted when, once again, Jenna won immunity. The person who had never won a single immunity before then, but just a light flickered on inside of her, and she started winning a bunch of crap, just like Kim Johnson from Survivor Africa. I don't think Rob had plans to take Matthew to the final 2 anyways, but fortunately for Matthew, Jenna cast the sole vote for Rob. That meant that the final 2 were Matthew and Jenna, and I'm not sure who I would have voted for in this situation, because, like, for most of the final 2s up until this point, I kind of have a good idea of who I would have voted for. I probably would have voted, if I was a juror in Borneo, I would have voted for Richard, probably. The one upset is I would have voted for, Colby, instead. I would have definitely voted for Ethan over Kim, like, yeah. And then, Marquesas is a little bit tricky. I don't know. I think I would have voted for Vesepia, probably because I believe Vesepia won more comps than Nalea ever did, and she just did more while still flying under the radar. And then Thailand, no-brainer, I would have voted for Brian over Clay. But with this, I really don't know, because I just don't know, because I guess Jenna was more of a, strategic player than Matthew, but Matthew was, like, Jenna was never in a position to lose before that, whereas Matthew was constantly, targeted, so I really don't know who I would have voted for. It was just kind of a pretty lackluster final 2, and that's really, like, the Amazon was proving to be such a good season. Like, up until that point, it would have gone, like, the Outback, Marquesas, Amazon, and then everything fell apart at the final 4, and it made such an unsatisfying, anticlimactic final 2, that it was just, it left a sour taste in my mouth. Parting with this, I also highly recommend that you read Matthew's bio on the CBS website. It's pretty interesting. The guy's done a lot of stuff. Here we go, the man who should have won, and now you're probably thinking, come on, everybody says that he should have won. Rob Cesternino this, Rob Cesternino that, Rob Cesternino blah, blah, blah. He was even titled the smartest player to never win by Jeff Probst himself. So yeah, we get it. He is probably one of the greatest people that has never won. At least the greatest person to never win that I can think of, at the very least. Was he a great physical player? Not really, but he was likable when he was on Tambaqui and continued to play a very solid mental and social game. He was just transferred to Jabiru to his advantage by making alliances with Dina, Heidi, and Jenna, and took Matthew under his wing to teach him about the game, which was very weird. Like, that is what made Rob so great. He's playing his first time as if he's played before, where he was mentoring other people, their first time playing, while he himself was also playing for the first time. And he also revolutionized the tactic of flipping on alliances, something that had only half been completed successfully in the Marquesas. He had changed the game for sure, and was on track to be one of the best winners since Richard Hatch back in Season 1. But instead, after he had lied and played his way to the Final 4, Jenna pulled the rug out from under him and, like, everyone else that was still playing, winning out on immunity and finally getting rid of him at the final 3. I guess the world just wasn't ready for Rob Cesternino, but he definitely was one of the most fun players to watch thus far. So, like I predicted, I'm definitely, for sure, going to have to do the Jobberoo section of this review in the next episode. I don't know when I'm making this, because on the date that I'm filming this right now, I think I just uploaded the newest the last video, the one about Masked Singer 4, like yesterday or something, or maybe the day before that, something like that. So it's been I'm making a lot of videos in a short amount of time. I probably will make the video about Jobberoo pretty soon after I get this uploaded. It might be uploaded very close to the upload of this. Maybe what I'll do is I'll make both and then just upload them back to back so that it's not in one big video. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I feel maybe a little bit awkward making this a two-parter, because I feel like it's better if I just get all my thoughts in one video, but it makes sense for the convenience of the viewers. I didn't have to do that with Thailand because the season sucked, and all my thoughts on each contestant could be, compressed into one episode, or into one video. But basically, I guess if I had to pick my favorite Tambaqui, probably Rob. Yeah, Rob. I liked him a lot. I liked Matthew and Butch too, but Rob just stole the show, and he was just always so fun to watch. So anyways, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you later. Be on the lookout for the Jobberoo episode very soon.